Hello, I'm Richard Gisbert, and you're at The Listening Post. This week, a flu epidemic goes viral on the world's media.
This is the big one.
How swine flu infected cyberspace and gave the mainstream media a reporting challenge. The TV career that apparently cost a Pakistani singer her life. The journalists from Sierra Leone arrested for speaking out. And lost in the supermarket, the clash between a bull and a shopping cart. There have been others, SARS and bird flu, but swine flu is the latest case study of how an influenza epidemic is covered in the digital age. So how did the media perform? From reporting what we do know about this type of flu to what we still don't know, the media played a crucial role in informing the public of the threat and protecting people. As the blogosphere swung into action with countless blogs, Twitters, and messages about the spread of the virus, creating a global digital rumor mill, the mainstream media got their teeth into a story that sold newspapers and boosted TV ratings. That's our starting point this week. Swine flu, the media, and whether or not the reporting was on the mark.
Breaking news, a fast-moving new strain of the flu.
The swine flu virus is worrying health officials.
The problem with swine flu is that nobody knows what it is, and yet there is an immense public appetite.
العالم العربي فيبدو حتى الآن بعيدا عن عدوى الفيروس.
Yo quisiera plantear el asunto de las vacunas.
There's been a lot of speculation going on because of the lack of certainty.
This is a strange virus and a deadly one.
An outbreak of swine flu. Panic has spread along with swine flu.
The official term is not swine flu, it's the H1N1 virus. And within the first few days of the outbreak in Mexico, the news was spreading faster than the virus.
The new terror in the Middle East is swine. On one day, I watched 6 networks leading with the swine flu story as if there were no news about Iraq, Palestine, or Lebanon. Think about it. Reports about attacks in Iraq and other hotspots seem to have all but vanished for the time being.
Potential health disaster.
Growing threat of the swine flu.
And even though it's a legitimate story, journalists aren't very good at assessing risk. In the U.S., there are 30,000 deaths every year from flu. Not swine flu, just regular flu. So if you look at the proportionality, much greater coverage than the flu normally ever gets in the U.S.
The world is now closer to an influenza pandemic than at any time in the last 40 years.
And the reason is this is dramatic. It's a very dramatic case.
Dramatic because of the potential pandemic, symbolic because of the link to pigs, scary because of how many countries it spread to, confusing because of the relatively few number of cases, and confounding to media consumers because of how speculative much of the reporting was.
We simply do not know at this point. Will swine flu turn out to be like the great pandemic of 1918 that killed tens of millions of people?
Scientists hope they can just get a handle on this quickly before it spreads like wildfire.
This could also turn out to be like the big scare about avian flu that happened a few years ago that really turned out to be much ado about nothing.
This flu outbreak might be milder than we were warned about.
We believe that we can immediately understand science, but scientists don't understand swine flu. Government officers don't understand swine flu. Mexican public officials don't understand swine flu. They're beginning to understand it.
A show of hands if you are concerned that this is the big one. This is the big pandemic to be worried about.
The traditional media is being forced then to report something that it doesn't understand, that it can't make any sense of, and it's doing so in a way which only adds to the confusion.
Even handshakes are being seen as risky.
Influenza-like illnesses.
The tendency in media circles is to err on the side of overcovering the story, not undercovering the story. If you look at the market for cable news, generally the audiences are very low and the line is very flat, but then it spikes and it goes up when there's some kind of a crisis. So there's an economic incentive to spike the news, to cry wolf in a certain sense, because your ratings go up, your circulation goes up, and you can't be accused later of having missed the story.
When you get to the internet, however, that is a completely different matter, because it's conspiracy, it's madness, it's get your fake Tamiflu here. It's all shades and mostly panic-driven.
Of the new media madness, many of the main offenders were using Twitter. The instant blogging site produced countless rumors about the virus, its treatment, and then spread them over cell phones and computer lines.
The problem with this new public spaces like Twitter is that a lot of conversations which are supposedly being conducted in private actually being conducted in public. For them, it's just a casual way to engage in conversations that they would engage in, if they were in, a coffee shop, if they're talking to their neighbors.
This is just the, online version of what used to be over the backyard fence gossip. And so gossip, whether it's over that backyard fence or on Twitter, is not prone to be very reliable.
New media works off the same principles as swine flu. It's a pandemic form of media, has no center, it's intensely viral, moves very fast. And that's how information has been distributed in the Twitter age. New media doesn't cover anything. New media is us. So it simply reflects how we're thinking. And we are both creators of the pandemic and also victims of it. We're so bound up with the pandemic, its delusions, its inventions, its rumors, that it's very hard to separate ourselves from it.
And therein lies the real hazard of misinformation. Between the rumor-fueled panic-demic spreading through new media and the ratings-driven, circulation-boosting, oft-confused reporting of mainstream outlets, media consumers could still be suffering from lasting side effects the next time a flu story breaks. And scientists are very clear on that point. There will be a next time.
That maybe it is mild this time around, but it leaves us and boomerangs back months later as a more severe illness.
There is a danger that the media, particularly the Daily Apocalypse kind of view from some of the tabloids, will switch people off into thinking that there is no danger. So the media has a very fine line to balance on between making sure that people understand the gravity of the threat and are prepared for it, but also not over-egging it.
The swine flu epidemic.
H1N1 virus. 9 countries have confirmed cases.
So that people think, oh God, crying wolf again, not another pandemic.
Here's how our Global Village voices see the media coverage of the swine flu epidemic.
I think what we can take away from the swine flu media coverage, both in traditional media and new media, is that information and panic can spread faster than any virus. And that people now believe the information that they get from emails and blogs just as much as they believe the information they would get from a newspaper story or a package that they would see on a television news program.
Mainstream media has dropped the ball on their reporting of the swine flu. Very simply put, they are journalists. They're supposed to investigate. They're supposed to have some ethics behind them. Instead, they run around with this banner that here comes this big pandemic. Get ready, it's a pandemic coming. Why? Huh? They said that. Somebody told me that. No, somebody over here said that. It's a pandemic. Run for the hills.
If you haven't been watching the news for the last few weeks and then came in, sat down and watched it, you'd be out the back digging a bunker preparing for Armageddon before the first news break came on. It is that much in your face. The Iraqi war, if that story had been sold with such ferocity as the swine flu, then it would never have been allowed to go ahead. And yet which event has been the biggest killer and will likely remain the biggest killer of innocent life?
Anyone looking to be one of our Global Village voices can go about it in 3 ways. You can email us at listeningpost@aljazeera.net, go on Facebook and look for the Listening Post page, or you can follow us on Twitter. The advantages of the Facebook and Twitter options is that we can let you know what stories we're working on and how you can get with the program. Time now for Listening Post News Bites. There's a disturbing report out of Pakistan of a woman reportedly murdered by her own brothers in a so-called honor killing. Her crime was not adultery this time, but performing on television. Ayman Udas was a singer from Peshawar, and according to Britain's Sunday Times newspaper and Pakistan's NDTV, she was shot to death. The woman's husband blames 2 of her brothers who have yet to be apprehended. Udas performed frequently on PTV, the state-run TV channel, and despite her growing popularity, her family made it known that they considered her performances on television to be sinful. Pakistani media are feeling the effects of the growing power of the Taliban and conservative Islamic forces in the country. Many media outlets have been shut down in Swat, a territory not far from Peshawar, by conservative mullahs. The U.S.-based media rights group, the Committee to Protect Journalists, has named and shamed what it calls the world's worst countries to be blogging from. Topping the list of online oppressors is Myanmar, the country formerly known as Burma. The CPJ cites Myanmar's restrictions on blogging, its wholesale shutdown of the internet during the popular uprising of 2007, and the 59-year prison term it imposed on a blogger known as Zarganar for disseminating video footage after Cyclone Nargis hit last year. Many Middle Eastern countries, such as Iran, Syria, and Egypt, also made the top or bottom 10, as did Cuba and Turkmenistan. With the proliferation of internet penetration and access to the World Wide Web, repressive regimes are fighting back through detentions, arbitrary regulations, and intimidation. Last year, the CPJ reported that for the first time, bloggers and other online journalists had overtaken print and broadcast reporters in the number of those detained for their work. Up until this past week, Libya had one television station called Al Libya TV that was not under the control of the state. Now it has none. The private channel, launched in 2007, is now being run by the state broadcaster Al Jamahiriya. The channel's managing director is reported to be in state custody. Al Libya had been linked to the high-flying son of Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi, Saif al-Islam. Although there has been no official comment on the takeover, it's understood that the channel aired programs critical of the government. The closure is seen as a setback in the recent loosening of media controls in the country. Earlier this year, for the first time in a quarter century, foreign newspapers were made available on Libyan newsstands. A controversial video game based on a famous battle between Iraqi fighters and U.S. troops in 2004 has been pulled by its publisher. The Japanese gaming company Konami Digital Entertainment has confirmed that it has shelved plans to release 6 Days in Fallujah, which was set to go on sale next year. 6 Days was designed to be a state-of-the-art game along the lines of the U.S. ground offensive in Fallujah, one of the bloodiest battles of the war. Despite creative input from the U.S. Marine Corps, the proposed game attracted a ton of bad press, as well as criticism by veterans groups who deemed it inappropriate and insensitive, especially since U.S. operations continue in the country. We're back after the break with a report on the case of journalists from Sierra Leone who were punished for speaking out on women's rights.